Hi everyone, happy Valentine's Day. This is Irina here, and I wanted to come live and do this video. And actually, I wanted to do this video because I think it's a really important topic. And since it's a Valentine's Day, it's kind of a good excuse to do this live and talk about this, and also record this. And I'm intending to share this video with my clients so they kind of understand the conceptuals behind the work that we do in intimacy work that I do with my clients. So this is like I'm gonna talk about concepts. Basically, it's gonna be like a mini masterclass, a mini training today that I wanted to do and record and share with my clients so they understand what kind of work we do when they work with me. And I want to share it live on Facebook, so whoever is watching this and whoever is thinking about intimacy and their relationship today on this very special day, Valentine's Day, you can also benefit from it. So I'm going to talk about the key to intimacy. It just happened that in my work, I work a lot with that. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also do kind of intimacy guidance work. So I work a lot with intimacy and relationship struggles. I work with couples, I work with individuals. It's kind of became, my niche, my specialty, one of the things I do. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, I was the kind of person that couldn't have a relationship. I wasn't able to actually be in like a close, intimate relationships. I was, when I was 25, my way of ending a relationship was not to answer a person's call. So I was ghosting a lot. And so you just to give you an idea what kind of journey I've been on to where I started, I was afraid to be close to anyone. I had a lot of protections, a lot of shields, a lot of walls around my heart, my vulnerability, and I basically just wasn't able to stay in like a long-term relationship. At 25, I was a little better. So say like 21, 23, I was ghosting a lot. And at 25, I was a little bit better, but it was still, I had this independent, powerful self sort of persona. And I portrayed myself as of like, I don't need a relationship. Like I'm very much was like independent, free spirit, didn't want to attach and be, in like, it just seemed like it was limiting. But later I realized that behind that, I was just very scared of intimacy. I was very scared to be intimate because it's so intense. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Well, let me start with this. We all been wounded as children. As children, we come into this world and we are open, we are vulnerable, we are very much loving and unprotected. And we all get hurt because of that, because of how open and vulnerable we are. And so from very early age, we start building up walls. We are creating these walls around our vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability, what I mean, you can think about it as like your inner child. You can think about it as like this really soft, vulnerable, unprotected part in you, which is your core. You can think about it as like your open heart. So however you think about it, it's basically that part of you that's not defended, that is actually you at your core, your most sensitive, your most soft part of yourself. That's what I mean, your vulnerability. It's like your truth. It's who you are at your core. And as I was saying, we all have that when we come into this world. But then because of the world is a harsh place, most of our parents are not able to see and to care for our vulnerability the way we really need to, we start protecting this place, because this place, it hurts when we open, when we love, and when we unprotected and we come like that into the world. What happens is we get hurt, and we start building protections around that very vulnerable spot. So by the time we, I don't know, 10, 15, it's very soon around that vulnerability, we build a lot of walls. And we start relating to other people a lot of times from those walls, so we don't get hurt. We tend to protect that spot a lot. And then we create relationships, so we go into partnerships, and we try to relate to each other from that defended place. And a lot of times when we fall in love, those protections, they kind of dissolve. And that's why it feels so good to fall in love. That first year of relationship, the honeymoon stage, is created because a lot of those protections fall away, and we're naturally connecting to each other in our vulnerability, and it feels very safe, it feels very loving, because we're protected by this infatuation and love, and we really show up our best selves in this relationship. So the first years usually feels very good to our vulnerability, because it's so loving. Both people are very loving. And about year to year and a half, that starts to change, and people start to come back to those protections. So the attachment patterns are activated about year and a half. And that vulnerability that was at first so held and so nurtured, it starts to be kind of triggered again. The hurt starts to come up. We start noticing that maybe a partner is not always loving. And we tend to shut down this vulnerability. And when we shut down the vulnerability, we also start losing intimacy. Because you see, vulnerability is really the key to intimacy, because that's when both people are in vulnerability, in their undefended selves, that's what creates the intimate, deep, soulful connection that feels very much emotional and warm and loving. And that's actually what people are really searching for when they want this connection, when they want this intimacy. They want to really, what they looking for, but maybe not realizing, they want to be vulnerable and connect through that vulnerability. That's what intimacy is. We cannot talk about intimacy without vulnerability. It's just not possible. So if we are not connected to our own vulnerability, it's going to be very hard to create that intimacy in our life. And as I mentioned, most of us are not, because it's the vulnerability, the inner child, or however you want to call it, holds a lot of pain and struggles from the past when we were vulnerable, but we were not met with love and holding. And so we got hurt. And because we got hurt, we don't want to open up anymore in that way. And so what happens when couples come to see me, I work with couples and individuals on relationship struggles, they are already disconnected from their vulnerability. And so they come in from, and they are in that defended place, right? So if I drew a picture here, but if you see, like, this is vulnerability here, so around that vulnerability, those are the walls or protectors, we call them, protective cells, protective layers. And they relate, so couples a lot of times relate to each other from those protective layers. That might look like being critical of each other. Inner critic is a strong protector of that vulnerability. And so couples come in and they start being really critical of each other. And they criticize each other. Or they are angry at each other. Or they are blaming each other. And they are stuck in those defended patterns of protecting vulnerabilities, not realizing that that's all unconscious, of course. But they are stuck in this more hard cells, a protective layer of cells, and they just can't get to that intimacy they both want. They both want to be loved and intimately connected, but they just can't get there because their vulnerability is hurt and protected, and it's not safe to go there. They don't know how to get there on their own. That's why they need guidance and help. And that's the work I do with them when they come in. So when anger shows up in a relationship, when judgment shows up in a relationship, when there's criticism, when people criticizing each other, that's usually a sign that they're not connected to their own vulnerability, and also that hurts the other partner's vulnerability. And so, but then the other partners also doesn't own their own vulnerability, and so they protect their own vulnerability and start being defensive. And so the couple will get into this like blaming defense pattern, right? Like, it's your fault, no, it's your fault. And so they stuck because they, in order to resolve this, they really need to move on a deeper layer of what's happening, which is move towards those core feelings, vulnerable feelings, but they don't know how to do it, and it doesn't feel safe, and there's layers of protection around that vulnerability. So that's why they're really stuck. And that's basically like every couple I see, that's the pattern they're presenting. And you can kind of reflect on your own relationship, like, how do you do that? We all do it in relationships. And today in Valentine's Day, it's kind of a good time to reflect, okay, how do I do it in my own relationship? And I certainly done it. You know, when I was ghosting, I was just like disconnecting from my vulnerability of feeling bad about rejecting, or feeling, you know, not being able to be vulnerable. Or when I was later, you know, just feeling really hurt in a relationship, that's also a sign that maybe sometimes it happens where it's too much vulnerability in a relationship, and then the person becomes very sensitive and very you know, they over identify with their vulnerability. So there's a risk of being like a victim, like, oh, I'm always hurt in this relationship, so maybe that could happen as well. So there's really two things that could be happening. Like, people identify with their more powerful selves, like, I'm gonna show up in this relationship strong, I don't really need anyone, I'm okay, I'm good but on my own. So they are disconnecting and disowning of those more vulnerable parts that are needing the relationship. And we all have them. We all have parts that are actually needing the relationship, the love, the attention. And if we're not aware of that, then that's where the disconnects are happening and the intimacy cannot be created. So yeah, it's like I said, intimacy is just not possible without vulnerability. And I've been really working on my own vulnerability lately, and it's really scary. It's really hard. A vulnerability, I think about it as like there are layers and layers of vulnerability, and it's very scary to show up as you are. and speak your truth. And I was listening to the Art of Accomplishment podcast recently, and Joe Hudson, he speaks on how vulnerability is speaking your truth when it's really scary. And I love that definition because it's basically showing you that if you're not scared, then there's no vulnerability. And if you're not speaking your truth, there's no vulnerability. So those two really need to come together. And it's like showing yourself when it's scary. Showing who you are without having like a mask on or pretending somebody you're not, or protecting that vulnerability. And that's why this work is really, really hard. And unless you've done this work with like a therapist or a coach or a guide or a healer, most people show up protected the vulnerability. They protect the vulnerability and they relate to each other from like a mask. Or sometimes it happens when they have too much vulnerability and they sort of collapse into this like like a helpless child state. That can happen as well. And then they over-identified with that vulnerability and they can't create intimacy because it's too much of pain, too much of hurt. And I definitely been there as well. So it's sort of like one side is like, if you think about here, is like power self, strong, independent, always capable, always powerful. So that's one side of the spectrum. And this side of the spectrum is helpless, like victim, I can't do anything. So that's kind of the spectrum that one can go from this side to this side. And we want to find a balance where we come in our consciousness and awareness, and we don't identify with this power independent self. We still have it, but we don't identify with it. And we don't identify with this vulnerable inner child, soft, sensitive spot in us that we all have. But when we maintain our consciousness, our awareness, and we relate from this place of awareness to this child, then we can hold the child, help the child, take care of the child, and also let the child show up in a relationship, but not as this wounded self, but through the awareness, through the consciousness. And that's what creates this beautiful intimacy when we can be aware of our vulnerability, but we don't become that, and we don't kind of place that onto our partner, sort of like, here, take care of my vulnerability, which is another like extreme. But we don't also show up in a relationship as this powerful self, which is like, I don't need you, like, I don't need this relationship, like, you can do whatever I want. And that's also not always the truth. That's why a lot of times when people want to create very like free relationships, right? Like when these days, like I'm in California and people go talk about like open relationships and polyamory and things like that, and I always wonder what happens to their vulnerability, because vulnerability is inevitably is going to be threatened by this. Like that wounded child is always going to be threatened by this. And so when I guess it is possible for someone to be connected to vulnerability, to care for that fear of being abandoned and rejected, and still take care of that ourselves, and allow the partner the freedom that they want. I guess that's possible. I'm definitely not there. To me, just to my vulnerability, that's very scary to have like something like an open relationship. I guess for me personally, that's not the way to go. It's too like risky and too scary for my vulnerability. And so so whether you're in a relationship, say you are in a relationship right now, but you feel like your relationship is not connected, like your relationship is like you know, like we're good friends. Like we're good friends. Maybe you get along fine, or maybe you're even fighting. But it doesn't have that intimate like I was we were me and my husband, we were celebrating Valentine's Day a little early last yesterday on the couch, and like he was looking at me, right? He was looking at me and he was like, I love you so much. And you know, he was looking into my eyes and I felt so seen, and I felt so like like I have chills talking about this, because it just really everything I ever wanted, like that level of intimacy and see, and like he was really seeing me and witnessing and appreciating me and really loving me. and and you know, that's like after 10 years of being together and being married and two little kids later, we still have that, but it didn't come naturally. It didn't come like, you know, we had to work for it. Like that was a lot of freaking work to get to that place. But oh my God, is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. But we spent a lot of resources and time working on our ability to go there. And I was reflecting on my journey, you know, what is it, like 13 years ago, me not being able to be vulnerable in a relationship. It was like too much to let somebody in like that. Fast forward to now, having that amazing connection with somebody that feels like basically the love of my life. And I'm not gonna cry talking about this, but I could. Like that's how it feels like. It's like the heart and is really opening when I think about that connection. And so when I think about this, and this is what I talk to my couples, you know, couples I work with this about this. I say, well, you only have this one life, and you could create the relationship, the intimacy that you want. And yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, it's gonna require resources, but then you have this amazing relationship. Like, isn't it worth it? Isn't it like what we all want? And then I realized maybe not what everybody wants this. Maybe some people don't want this, and that's okay. But if, say, you watching this and something is resonating, you're like, yes, I want this. I want to create this intimate, deep, soulful connection. When you look into the eyes of the other person, you basically, you know, crying from joy that that's happening. You absolutely can create it. And I want to empower you right now to commit to that vision. If that's what you want in your heart, if that's that's what you really desire in your heart, you absolutely can create this. Absolutely. And don't settle for anything less. Why would you settle for anything less if you can have that? And if you're in a relationship, you can bring up this to your partner and say, hey, would you want to create this with me? Would you want to create this amazing intimate relationship? Whether you're fighting right now with your partner, and a lot of couples come to me when they're already fighting, and that's harder to work with, because there's levels of resentment. And you know, when the break between them started happening like 5 years ago, and they come 5 years later and they're already very like resentful of each other and a little checked out. So it's gonna take more time to create that connected intimacy that they're wanting, because they're so hurt already. There's so much pain accumulated. But you can start earlier. So like, say right now, maybe you have, okay, like your relationship with your partner is okay, but it's not like that soulful, intimate, like, oh my God, like, oh, everything here is just like opens up and activated and buzzing with that heartfelt connected energy, and that's what you want. You can also create that. And for those of you who say like your partner is not interested in that, I also work with individuals, sometimes women, sometimes men, but basically one partner is like wants to create that, and the other partner is not doesn't want to go to, like, say, couples work, one partner can still create that with themselves and then bring it to the relationship. So you could keep connecting to your own vulnerability and create that intimacy within yourself first by uncovering that vulnerability in you, connecting to your core vulnerability, your inner child, your inner place of softness and sensitivity. And then you could bring it into relationship and model it for your partner. That's also possible. And with that, the relationship is going to change and the intimacy is going to change because you're going to be different and you are 50% of the relationship. So you hold a lot of power in a relationship. And your partner will definitely feel something is changing. Even if you're not saying something, he or she will feel like, oh, there's something different. And they might follow you to that place. So you can become like sort of like an intimacy guide for your partner. And you can model, once you develop this deep self-intimacy with yourself, you can then show it to your partner and in a way model that for your partner. And you can create this space of healing with your partner, which I believe relationships is basically our intimate relationship, partnerships is biggest place of healing. It has certainly been for me. And with one partner changing and going to that places, they can then bring it to the partner and show like, look, go without words, right? This is all like energetic. But if you change and you bring to your partner this deep self-intimacy and self-connection, he or she will be like, oh, like what's happening here? It kind of feels good. I want to go there as well. So that's when your partner doesn't want to work on this and say you really want to deepen that connection and intimacy. So I want to empower people to start working on themselves, because a lot of people I talk to whose partner doesn't want to work on their relationship, they say, well, my partner doesn't want to work on it, so there's nothing I can do, and they go into this like defeated state and collapse, and that's a very disempowering place to be. That's like giving up your life, quality of life, right? Because intimacy is the quality of life. Like if you can't connect to yourself intimately, to your partner intimately, that's not, for me, that's not just the quality of life that I want to be living. That's, to me, it's like I don't want to have this life without intimacy, because even if I say it's not related to my partner, but my intimacy with myself makes my life so much richer. Because when I'm intimate with myself, when I'm connected to my vulnerability, everything becomes more alive. It's like the world becomes more alive. I feel things more deeply. It's like more life force energies is running through me. That's what intimacy with myself is creating for me. And there's like less stuckness in my body, and I can feel deeply. And I feel pain more when I'm intimate with myself than when I'm not intimate with myself. That's true. That's sort of the price for it. But I'm willing to feel the pain so I can also feel the joy. I'm willing to feel the down so I can also feel the upside, because they come together, of course. The range of your ability to feel, it's as much as you feel up, you feel down, but then, so it's expanding that range. So that was my little spiel for those of you who say in a relationship but their partner is not interested of doing this intimacy work. And again, I want to empower you to start doing it yourself if that's what you want. Don't give up on your dream just because your partner maybe is not interested in it at this time, because it might change once they see what's happening with you, and you can create this deep healing space in your relationship, and you can be the guide, the intimacy guide for your partner. Of course, the best is when both partners want to create this intimacy. Then it's like the best. Then, if both partners are on board and they're really committed, I love working with couples like that, because then it's just boom, boom, boom. It's like really easy. They get to it much faster. Because especially when they like deeply connected to it in their hearts, it's like you can tell that their soul is longing for this, the heart is longing for this, and then it's just a matter of removing the blocks to that vulnerability, so they can connect very intimately. And that's like working with pain, with trauma, with everything that's in a way. And of course, for singles, if they want to meet a partner who's like that, who can provide them with that intimate connection that they want, then their work will be connecting to their vulnerability themselves, becoming very intimate with themselves, and then they can be an energetic match for that partner who can do that as well. Because our partner will always match our level of vulnerability. So if we disowned, or if we're disowning our vulnerability, if we not connecting to our inner child, to our wounding, to our traumatic experiences, all that hurt that we've been carrying, if we're not connecting to that we're gonna attract the partner who's also not connecting. And that might feel good for a while, and we feel like, oh, we're really two strong people, having a great relationship. But eventually that's gonna it's not gonna be a deeply connected, intimate, like soulful, heartfelt relationship, because heart feels everything. Heart feels the pain and love and joy, but it's like all the range of feelings. So if you're single, you have a chance to do this work on your own right now and get yourself to the point where you are so deeply connected with yourself, intimately connected, and your vulnerability, that the partner who's like that is gonna show up. It's gonna energetically be attracted to you, gonna come into your field. You will just, it will be, the timing, I don't know, but that's good. If you do this work for yourself, it's going to be so much easier to attract this person in your life. They're gonna really show up miraculously. So let me think. Let me just feel into this. Kind of been talking for a while, been really connecting to my own vulnerability before this, because doing lives is extremely vulnerable for me, but I still want to do them. I still want to give this information to you in hopes this is helpful. And just to summarize my point is that the key to intimacy is vulnerability. And vulnerability, what I mean by vulnerability, is your softest, most sensitive, most open, unprotected place in your heart. In your heart, maybe in your core, but somewhere inside your body, there's a place like that. And most of us are disconnected from it. And when we're disconnected from it, we can't feel love deeply. And we can't be intimate with ourselves or with another person on that soulful, connected, deep level that I believe we desire. Some of us desire, I desire. And then the work I've been describing, the work I do with my couples and the work with individuals as well, is like we're peeling the layers to that vulnerability, connecting to that vulnerability, creating deep self-intimacy with ourselves and then extending that intimacy to the partner. And with that, the blaming cycles, the criticizing cycles, the defensiveness cycles, they tend to dissolve. Because when we are connected on the deep level, it's really creating that deep intimacy that we want. I'm feeling I'm pretty complete as far as like what I wanted to say. Please post your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer them here. Any questions about intimacy or your relationship, I'm happy to answer. And I'm wishing you an amazing Valentine's Day with your partner, or if you're single, with yourself. Hopefully you will get to love yourself so much today. Or you can give that love to your partner and receive love from your partner and really open your heart and come into the frequency of love and self-love, or love just in general. And you will radiate this love today, so everybody who will come into contact with you will feel it. You can become that beacon of love and acceptance that will benefit the world. And I believe that you, if you become that, maybe 5 people who will come to contact with you today will really feel it and benefit. And I have one relationship clarity session left for February, and I'm gonna open a few more spots in March. So if you want to connect and have like an individual session where we look at your relationship and create like a plan for you to create intimacy in your life that you want, you can go ahead and I'll drop a link. You can schedule that. It's free. It's just for us to meet and connect. It's free for new clients to kind of get introduced to my work, for me to connect to more people. I've been really enjoying doing them. So I'll post a link for that. And if you have any questions, just comment here. If you have any comments, if you resonated, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. And I enjoyed doing this live to you and for you. And I see you on the internet. Okay, have a beautiful Valentine's Day, everyone. Full of love, connection, intimacy, joy, all the good stuff to you. All right, bye-bye.